So around the holidays, I do a lot more baking than probably any other time of year. And it was a couple of years ago that I got really frustrated with some of my kitchen tools and utensils. And the first one of those is a dough scraper. I had a plastic one that was very similar to this that I would use to scrape dough, especially wet dough, out of bowls, but I actually used it the most to scrape clean anytime I would get something stuck on my cast iron pan that didn't easily come out. Except the best time to clean your cast iron is when it's still warm, because that's when things that are stuck on come off easier, and it would warp. So it worked okay, but it was plastic, which, being a homesteader, I'm not crazy about using plastic, especially when it's in heat. So it did protect the cast iron, because you don't want to use metal on cast iron because it can scrape and scratch the seasoning, but it warped. And once it warped, it was pretty much useless. So I asked my husband, because I got really frustrated because it warped so much that it was like not usable anymore. I'm like, can you make me a wooden one of these? He's like, yeah, I think I can. So he made me a wooden one, and I fell in love, and I started using it all over the kitchen and all over the place. And then I had a bench knife. So I've used metal bench knives in the past that have like a metal blade here, and then they'll have a wooden handle. And then I actually found a wooden bench knife, except it had this weird like cutout that was supposed to be a handle, but whoever designed it, it was a big company. I can't remember the brand name now. I got it at Fred Meyer's in their kitchen department. But you could tell that whoever had designed it made it, and they didn't actually use it in the kitchen, or not very often, because if you use the handle where they had it located, it actually made it so that you were holding it at like this odd angle. And we need this part of the bench knife, the blade aspect of it, to be in contact with whatever surface we're at. And if you were using the handle, it put it up at an angle that you couldn't use it sufficiently. So I came to my husband again, and I'm like, I really want a wooden one of these without a finish, because it had like a weird coating. It wasn't a plastic coating, but it wasn't just the regular wood. You could tell it had been painted with some type of a coating, had been on there, or varnish. And I didn't want that. And I said, I need one, and I don't want a dumb handle on it. And so he made me this one. And since then, I have been using this for over a year, and I love it. I have never used a bench knife so much in the kitchen, but especially around baking time. So as we move into the holidays, pie crust is something that I'm the designated pie baker for all of our holiday get-togethers. And so I usually make at least 4 pie crusts at once, so it's a big thing of dough. And so this works great, better than a metal knife, because the dough, especially wetter doughs or kind of sticky doughs, I find that it doesn't stick to the wood like it does to metal. So I'll use this to divide out my pie crust when I'm making that. I'll use it if I have like rolls of cookie dough, because I will make up cookie dough for around the holidays, and then I will put it in the freezer or the fridge, so that when I'm doing like a big marathon cookie baking day, I don't have to take as much time. And most cookie dough, if it's been allowed to sit in the fridge, especially dough like sugar cookies, even chocolate chip cookies, though, that we need to roll out in the instance of sugar cookies, I don't roll out my chocolate chip cookie dough, but if it's allowed to sit in the fridge, it does something kind of magical to the flavors. It tends to deepen, and it has a better texture, but it also has a better flavor. Same thing with like molasses sugar cookies, that allows the spices to, I don't know, they just do this wonderful mingling thing, and the texture is better. So I like to make up all of the cookie dough that I'm going to be doing for Christmas gifts and Christmas baking ahead of time, and I'll freeze it. And then I just have to thaw it, and then it's still chilled on the day that I want to bake, and it just makes it a lot easier. But this works great if I'll roll it in logs, if it's like a sliced cookie, like chocolate chips, and then I can just go through and push down really quickly and cut them out in nice even discs and then bake them. The other way that this thing shines is any type of rolling out. So if you're doing hand pies, if you're doing biscuits, obviously pie crusts, no matter how you put down your little dusting of flour, whenever you roll it out, you know there's always some dough left behind, right? Well, if you use your dish rag or sponge or whatever you're using to clean with, I just use dish rags, when you try to scrub it up, it ends up getting like this gummy and pasty, and then you just have like this flour glue mess all over your rag or all over the kitchen countertop. Enter the bench knife. All you do is just scrape it up, and then I just put it into my hand, or even just bring the garbage can and scrape it right into it, but it makes scraping a dream. I love it for that. When I'm doing, actually I use it even with vegetables too. So if I'm chopping up a large amount of like peppers, onions, whatever vegetables, if we're doing a stir fry, or even like in a soup or a stew, And I've got more chopped vegetables than is what gonna fit on the edge of my regular kitchen knife, then I just scoop it up on here because it holds a lot more. And then I can transfer it and drop it in, which sounds like silly, but anything that I can do to speed up the amount of steps that I'm doing in the kitchen, I am all about. Now, for those of you who are doing large amounts of garlic, we kind of have a saying, if a recipe calls for 1 clove of garlic, do 5. We don't feel you can ever have too much garlic. But if I'm doing large amounts of garlic, depending upon the recipe, especially salsa making time, if you're using a knife blade, then you can only do about 2 to 3 cloves of garlic. Depends on how big your garlic cloves are. Well, insert the bench knife. It's also great if you have kids that are helping and you don't want them to have the sharp edge of an actual metal knife. So you just put down all your garlic cloves that will fit here, set it like that, and smash. It smashes them all beautifully, and you have them done all in one go. Now I feel it actually, because it's a little bit more of an even pressure because it's a larger surface, that it smashes them better, and so you can just easily take off all of the little paper comes off, because sometimes if I'm doing multiple cloves with the knife, because it's longer, and you just have a smaller place where you're applying the pressure, the cloves that are a little bit further out won't get smashed all the way, and then I have to re-smash them in order to take the paper off. So if you can't tell, I really love this bench knife, but the place that I probably use it the most, or I shouldn't say the most, but it really shines, is when you are doing artisan bread loaves. So this is a wet overnight dough. If you want to get the recipe for this, it's the 5-minute no knead artisan. You can check out the video I have and the printable of this, a recipe, but we're going to be making bread with this today. So I only need half of this dough to do a round loaf. And this is a very wet dough because it's no knead. It's supposed to be wet dough. It's been in the fridge. And so it's gonna stick to your hands. But if you use the bench knife, it doesn't stick as much. Now this is just the first part. So we're just gonna go ahead and come in here. I'm just cutting this in half. So you can see I've made a cut. Nothing is sticking to this. We're gonna cut it in half there and just a little bit. And then I'm gonna use the dough scraper to get in here so I can get in on the angle and take this bit, or half I should say, of the dough out. And I'm just gonna pinch that off. It's quite stretchy, which is good. We see all of our gluten has formed. And then I'm gonna set this right on my countertop. And you can see a little bit is sticking to this, but a lot more will stick to your fingers. And now we need to shape this. So with sourdough or artisan or free-form loaves where they're not going into a bread pan, you have to create tension on the top or you'll get like those pancake loaves. So we need to create tension on the top of the dough so as it rises, it's able to hold that shape and rise up rather than rise flat. But if you're trying to do this with your fingers, because you can see this is a pretty sticky dough, it's a lot harder to create that tension and you end up with dough all over your fingers. Now, you're still gonna end up with some dough, but not nearly as much. So the way that we do that is we have this, and it's kind of in a round already. You're gonna take the edge of your bench knife and you're gonna go under and you're gonna move this. And you're gonna just keep doing that, working this, and moving it in like a circle motion. So as you do that, you can see that is starting to create tension and it looks like it's kind of stretching across the top and it's more upright into a ball format. So we're gonna continue to do that. You can see it's getting smoother and it's not sticking to my countertop, or very little. So we're just gonna keep doing this a couple more times and get that nice stretched dough ball. There we go. See how nice that looks? And there's very little that is sticking, voila, to my hands or to my countertop. Now we need to transfer this to our preheated 450 Fahrenheit oven. So yes, use oven mitts, quite hot. And this is where this comes in handy as well, because we need to transfer this to this very hot preheated cast iron. So we're gonna go right underneath, pick it up, plop it in. Look at that. Now we need to score this. so that we're directing as this rises and directing it so it doesn't like blow out, and we can make really pretty patterns or whatever we want. So what do I feel like doing today? This is one of my favorite parts. So now we're gonna place the lid over top, and it's gonna go right into the oven. And bake for 30 minutes. So you can see we have a little bit of dough that's stuck from our bread, but look how easy, look at that. Totally clean without any glue sticky part. So we'll just get that scraped. So you can see I haven't even touched this with a rag yet or any soap or water, and my countertop is essentially clean of any of this sticky dough. Look at that lusciousness. Now, right when I take this out, obviously this is still really hot, but I want to transfer this loaf to a cooling rack because I don't want the bottom crust to become too crunchy. So that's where this comes in really handy because this is so hot, and I can just transfer that straight to my cooling rack. If you would like to check out getting some of our custom handmade wood bench knives and dough scrapers, you can follow the link in the video description. We have a limited supply. And you can also find more about how to properly choose and care for wood products in the kitchen in this video. And if you didn't snag the recipe for this bread yet, you're gonna wanna make sure that you hop on over to that video and get this recipe going in your kitchen.